A dog often decides what you are before you have said a single word, not who you claim to be, not what you post, not the smile you arrange for the outside world. A dog meets something older than that, something under language, something in the pace of your body, the noise in your nervous system, the tension in your hands, the way your attention lands on another living being. And if you have ever watched it happen, you know how strange it can feel. Two people enter the same room. One kneels, calls sweetly, opens their arms, tries very hard to be chosen. The dog hangs back. The other person does almost nothing. They stand quietly, soften their posture, let the silence breathe, and somehow, without spectacle, the dog walks to them first. It feels mysterious because, in a way, it is. But it is not magic. It is perception. Extremely old, extremely precise perception. And it may reveal more about human psychology than most of us are ready to admit. Welcome back. Get comfortable. Tonight, we are stepping into one of the quietest tests of character in ordinary life. The kind of person a dog trusts instantly, and why that matters more than it first appears. By the end of this, you will understand why some people seem to calm dogs almost immediately, why others trigger caution without ever meaning to, and why the answer has very little to do with charm. And later we will come to the part that stays with people longest, the possibility that what dogs trust in us is not performance at all but coherence, a kind of inner alignment we rarely notice in ourselves until an animal reacts to it. So let us begin at the beginning. First, dogs trust people whose energy arrives before their hands do. Most humans think the first contact is physical, the hand extended, the voice, the invitation. But for a dog, the encounter begins sooner. It begins with movement, speed, angle, weight distribution, the rhythm of approaching footsteps. Whether a body comes directly like a question or diagonally like an offering, dogs are masters of reading motion because long before they lived in our homes, survival depended on it. A sudden forward lean can feel intrusive. A looming torso can feel like pressure. A quick reach over the head can feel like a small trap from above. To us, these gestures may seem affectionate, harmless, automatic. To a dog, they can carry meanings we never intended. This is one reason the people dogs trust quickly often look unremarkable. They are not theatrically good with dogs. They simply move in a way that gives the animal room to think. Their bodies say, without words, you may approach if you wish. I am not here to take your choice away. And that matters, because trust in dogs is deeply connected to predictability. When a person's movements are smooth and readable, the dog spends less energy guessing. Less guessing means less vigilance. Less vigilance opens the door to curiosity. And curiosity is often the first shape trust takes, but movement is only the surface. Underneath it, there is something subtler. Second, dogs trust people whose nervous systems are not lying. This is where the subject becomes more intimate. A human can smile while feeling impatient, speak sweetly while feeling agitated, kneel down while internally demanding an outcome. Another human may say almost nothing, yet carry a steadier, quieter internal state. Dogs seem unusually sensitive to this difference. They do not merely react to what we do. They respond to the consistency between what we display and what we actually are in that moment. Part of that sensitivity may be chemical. Research suggests dogs can respond to human stress odors, and that the scent of human stress can alter how they interpret uncertain situations. In other words, dogs are not simply looking at our faces. They are, quite literally, reading the atmosphere of our bodies. That means some people are avoided not because they are bad, but because they are noisy in ways they themselves cannot hear. A storm under the skin, tight breath, accelerated rhythm, a body prepared for control, for performance, for the next thing. The dog does not moralize this. It simply notices. And when a dog meets someone whose system feels quieter, something remarkable happens. The animal often softens before contact is even made. The muscles around the mouth loosen. The gaze becomes less sharp. The body curves instead of braces. Trust, in these moments, is not earned through persuasion. It is permitted by the absence of hidden threat. This is one of the first deeper lessons dogs offer us. Calm is not just a mood. It is information. And if that seems almost unfair, if you are wondering whether dogs are reading parts of you you have learned to conceal, the answer may be yes, but there is still more. Third, dogs trust people who do not make attention feel like pressure. Humans often confuse warmth with intensity. We believe love must announce itself. So when we meet a dog, especially one we want to like us, we brighten our voice, stare too long, lean too close, and fill the space with eagerness. Ironically, eagerness can feel heavy. The people dogs trust instantly often have a different quality of attention. It is soft, not vacant, present, but not consuming. They notice the dog without insisting on being noticed back. This matters because attention is powerful in the animal world. Direct staring can be confrontational. Fast, repeated bids for interaction can feel socially demanding. A dog who has just met you is not always asking for affection. Often, the dog is asking for the freedom to collect information, to sniff, to circle, to look away, to decide. People whom dogs trust quickly tend to respect this invisible sequence. They allow investigation without interruption. They understand, consciously or not, that trust grows better in unforced space than in emotional pursuit. And here, a small paradox appears. The less someone needs to be chosen, the safer they can feel to choose. This is not only true for dogs. It may be true in many relationships humans struggle to understand. But before we follow that thought too far, we need to talk about the voice. Fourth, dogs trust people whose voices regulate rather than dominate. Dogs are highly sensitive to human vocal tone, not only to what is said, but to cadence, pitch, intensity, and intention. Many studies suggest dogs attend closely to the emotional structure of our speech, especially dog-directed speech and prosody. They hear more than command. They hear the emotional shape around the command. That is why a calm, melodic, evenly paced voice can settle a dog faster than excited praise. It is not because the dog understands every word. It is because the dog is receiving a nervous system through sound. People whom dogs trust instantly often speak as though they are lowering the temperature of the room. Their words do not chase. They do not jab. They do not overflow. They create rhythm. And rhythm, to a social animal, is stabilizing. There is another detail here that many people miss. Trustworthy voices leave pauses. They do not crowd the animal's processing. They say a thing and then allow silence to do part of the work. This can feel almost mystical when you watch it. A person says very little. The dog looks once, looks again, then settles at their feet as if it has recognized something familiar. What it may have recognized is not language, but regulation. And once again, what dogs trust begins to sound less like charm and more like internal order. Still, some people are quiet and soft and patient, yet dogs remain unsure. Why? Because dogs are not only reading calm, they are reading intention. Fifth, dogs trust people who are legible. A legible person is someone whose signals match. Their posture, scent, speed, voice, gaze, and touch all tell the same story. There is no contradiction for the dog to solve. A less legible person may smile but move abruptly, speak kindly but stare too hard, remain physically still while emotionally vibrating with expectation. To another human, this can pass unnoticed. To a dog, mixed signals create work, And when an animal has to work too hard to interpret you, caution is often the safer choice. This may be one reason dogs seem to know certain people instantly, not because they possess supernatural judgment in the moral sense, but because they are astonishingly skilled at detecting coherence. They recognize when a being is all in one piece. That coherence often appears in tiny behaviors. A person waits for the dog to come closer before touching. They pet the shoulder or chest rather than descending over the head. They turn slightly sideways instead of approaching head-on. They let the interaction breathe. None of this is dramatic, but to a dog it can feel like clear grammar in a world full of confusing sentences. And if you have ever wondered why some animals adore elderly, people, children, or certain quiet strangers, this may be part of the answer. They often encounter less performance there. Fewer social masks, fewer conflicted cues, more directness of being. But trust is not only about what a person avoids doing, it is also about what they offer. Sixth, dogs trust people who respect choice. This may be the most powerful pattern of all. Trust deepens fastest when the dog discovers that proximity does not cost freedom. That coming near you does not automatically mean being grabbed, restrained, crowded, corrected, kissed, lifted, or claimed. People who are instantly trusted often have a permission-based way of existing around animals. They invite, then wait. They offer a hand, then withdraw it slightly. They touch briefly, then stop and see what the dog chooses next. They understand that one of the purest forms of reassurance is this: you may leave, and I will not punish the leaving. This has profound psychological meaning. For any social creature, trust is not the belief that nothing uncomfortable will ever happen. It is the belief that one's signals matter, that one can communicate and be heard, that boundaries will not be violated simply because affection is desired. When dogs trust certain people right away, they may be responding to exactly this experience. Not domination disguised as care, but care that can tolerate autonomy. And perhaps this is why watching a dog choose someone can feel oddly moving. On some level, we recognize the rarity of being approached without being possessed. Now, we come to something even more fascinating. Seventh, dogs often trust people who are attentive without being self-conscious. Some humans are very loving with animals, but their attention bends inward. They are partly watching themselves being loving. There is a small layer of self-monitoring over the interaction. Am I doing this right? Does the dog like me? Am I the kind of person dogs love? It is understandable, very human, but it changes the quality of contact. Then there are people who, for a moment, forget themselves. Their attention settles outward, fully and gently, on the animal. No performance, no self-image, no need to extract reassurance from the encounter. Dogs seem to respond strongly to this, perhaps because self-consciousness creates irregularity. It makes people speed up, reach too soon, switch tones abruptly, or force an intimacy the dog has not yet agreed to. Presence, by contrast, is simpler. It allows a person to notice the dog that is actually here, not the emotional fantasy in their head. And this is where the subject begins to widen. We started by asking what kind of people dogs trust instantly, but perhaps another question has been quietly forming beneath it. What kind of presence is safe for any nervous system to meet? Before we answer that, there is one more scientific thread we need to touch. Eighth, dogs and humans may build trust through a feedback loop, not a one-way signal. One of the most beautiful findings in canine research is the role of gaze in bonding chemistry. In certain contexts, when dogs and humans engage in gentle mutual gaze, oxytocin can rise in both. The bond is not simply observed, it is biologically reinforced. That matters because it suggests trust is not just a trait some people possess. It is also a process that can form between two beings who are regulating each other well. A dog looks, a human softens. The human softening changes the dog. The dog's change affects the human. A loop begins. And once you understand that, those seemingly magical first encounters feel less random. Some people are better at entering the loop. They do not interrupt it with pressure. They do not flood it with need. They allow the circuit to close naturally. This is also why the best relationships with dogs rarely begin with conquest. They begin with listening. Now, at this point, someone might ask a harder question. Does this mean dogs always trust the right people and avoid the wrong ones? Not exactly. Dogs are individuals. Their histories matter. Breed tendencies matter. Socialization matters. Pain matters. Trauma matters. Context matters. A dog may distrust a perfectly kind person because of a hat, a limp, a beard, a smell, a memory, a resemblance to something once frightening. Another dog may warm immediately to a person who reminds them of safety. So we should be careful here. A dog's trust is not a flawless moral verdict, but it is still meaningful. Because even when it is not a judgment of character, it is often a judgment of state, of immediacy, of what this body, in this moment, feels like to be near. And that may be enough to teach us something profound. Ninth, what dogs trust in us may be the part of us that has stopped trying to win. Think about the people you have seen dogs melt toward. Often, they are not the loudest, funniest, or most impressive person in the room. They may not even be dog people in the dramatic sense, but they have a quality that animals seem to recognize almost instantly. Nothing in them lunges, nothing in them bargains, nothing in them forces warmth before warmth is ready. They are there, clear, uncomplicated, available, but not hungry. In human life, we often call this groundedness, though we rarely live inside it for long. We rush, we perform, we compensate, we carry social static everywhere. We want to be liked quickly. We fear silence. We fear not being chosen. We mistake intensity for sincerity. Dogs, meanwhile, keep noticing the older truth. Safety is slow, readable, and real. This is why the topic matters. It matters because a dog's trust can become a mirror, not always a comfortable one, but an honest one. It reflects the difference between affection and intrusion, between calm and suppression, between friendliness and need, between presence and performance. And for many people, that realization reaches far beyond animals. What if the same qualities that help a dog trust us also make us easier for children to relax around, for anxious people to open up to, for strangers to feel unthreatened by, for loved ones to rest beside? What if trust, in its deepest form, is less about being charismatic than about being coherent? That word matters here. Coherent. A coherent person does not send one message with the mouth and another with the body. They do not push closeness while pretending to offer choice. They do not smile over strain and call it warmth. They feel more or less like themselves all the way through. Not perfect, not saintly, just integrated enough that another nervous system can stop scanning for danger. And perhaps this is what dogs reward. Not status, not performance, not image, but integration. It is a quietly radical idea, because most of modern life trains us away from coherence. We learn to override our body, decorate our emotions, hide our stress, manufacture instant likability, and move too fast through every living encounter. Then a dog walks into the room and within seconds responds most deeply to the person who seems least divided inside. No speech, no philosophy, no explanation. Just an animal placing its body beside a human and saying, in the only language that matters there, this one feels safe. There is something almost sacred in that, not because dogs are mystical judges sent to expose us, but because they remind us that trust is physical before it is verbal. It lives in timing, pressure, breath, congruence, scent, silence, and the humble dignity of allowing another being to choose. So if a dog does not trust you instantly, that is not a condemnation. It may simply be information, an invitation to slow down, to become more legible, to let your attention soften, to ask not, how do I get this animal to like me, but what am I bringing into the space before I ever touch them? And if dogs do tend to trust you quickly, perhaps the gift is not that you are special. Perhaps it is that around them, you become more fully yourself, less masked, less urgent, less split, more like a creature among creatures, which may be one of the most healing things a dog can quietly teach a human life. Because in the end, the people dogs trust instantly are often not those trying hardest to be loved. They are the ones whose presence does not ask for surrender, only honesty. And maybe that is why it matters so much. In a world full of noise, a dog still notices the oldest signal of all, whether it feels safe to come closer. If this stirred a memory for you, I would love to hear it. Was there ever a dog who trusted you immediately, or one who made you realize you needed to slow down and listen differently? Tell me about that experience. And if you enjoy these quiet explorations into animal behavior, human nature, and the hidden patterns living all around us, you are very welcome to subscribe. There is always more to notice than the world first reveals.